David Sand, it's so good to have you here in our chat today, and it's just going to be a lovely discussion. And I'm looking forward to getting some of your insights around leadership and that kind of thing. However, let's start with a bit of an introduction. You are the founder and CEO of Iwin. Tell us a little bit more about that. You ventured into this space, what, nearly 32 years ago now?
Yeah, it's been a while, but it certainly has gone fast. It's been an incredible journey. I've met some amazing leaders and in our client portfolio along the way. Just been astounded. I know we're talking leadership today, so that's also top of mind on thinking about leadership is the many wonderful clients that I've met that have held huge positions in these massive listed corporates. And it's been such a joy to work across so many different sectors of our economy: mining, insurance, motor industry, pharmaceuticals, tech, you name it. We've been there and we've had phenomenal relationships, um, helping those leaders build recognition and reward programs that inspire, motivate, and ignite passion within their workforce to accomplish the kind of culture that they want to see embedded in their organization that they believe will bring success along their leadership pathways. I started off, like many entrepreneurs, first of all in the corporate world, cutting my teeth, learning a lot, observing many good and bad habits of leaders along the way. And when the time was right, it all conspired to being the right time to start my own thing. And I had a passion for wanting to help the corporate leaders achieve excellence and great results in what they were doing. And also, an interesting little anecdote is that our business started in the year that our democracy was formed. So when we were all lining up to vote, and there was that incredible moment in our history. We also started our little journey as a business, and I'm a passionate South African. I love our country. I love the people potential in our country. I've observed incredible businesses develop from little startups like Discovery, for example, and into this now multinational global organization listed all over the place with leaders doing their thing. And it's been an absolute privilege to also live through many changing scenarios, not only from a cultural scenario where we went from an apartheid government to a free democracy, the changes that brought about socially for people in South Africa. But we've also lived through times which are financial, huge pressures. We've had recently global viral type of bio weaponry or whatever one wants to call it. But most exciting of all has been the tech disruptors that have not disruptors or enablers that have really helped businesses grow. And we're now on another wave of course, the AI revolution. So all of these things have woven an incredible rich tapestry for me as a person, a human being that's really just I had to grapple with that all, having to engage with it. And I always try and wake up every day and say, can I add something of value today? Can I add value? And I remember as a youngster reading Tony Robbins, and he said, you'll never be out of money if you add value. And that kind of stuck. So as a business is something that we've always strived for.
You've given me so many things to talk about, and there are a few things I think about your personal journey that are highly relevant. We'll come to those a little bit later. Just to come back to the business, I'd love to also explore the technology issues because I think it is something that you and your business have leveraged so cleverly. But let's start with the business. Your business is actually multifaceted and multinational. Tell me about the different parts of your business, just to frame everything. And because it isn't anymore exactly how you started. And tell us a bit more about that. And then maybe we can get into a little bit more about the technology, and then we can talk about leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, we've developed many different applications of our business, which is always something that I wanted to do because I like to think of framing our services primarily as a starting point as a consulting business. So, really understanding what is best for our customer and their requirements at a point in time and where they want to go with their business and helping those leaders and those people in those organizations win. So our purpose statement is really to help others win. And how do we do that? In the sales environment where we drive revenue, it's really about helping people in the sales environment achieve sales consistency and results through the proper kind of incentive programs that are related to sales. So we all know fundamentally salespeople are driven through commission structured systems that encourage the next sale, the motivation to get up and go. And not everybody is well geared to a sales environment because it's a tough place. You have to have a thick skin. But layered on top of that, top organizations, top 500 companies, all use incentives to drive sales communities. That might not be their own employed salespeople. That could also be their distribution channel. So if you have a product or a service that is sold on through resellers, wholesalers, and retailers, that channel to market then is an opportunity to incentivize them to do great things. So that's where we started. And the primary type of reward applied in that space was a travel incentive. So earn your commission along the way monthly. Make sure that is exciting, achievable, and attainable. And then the top achievers, the cream of the crop, would then go on this fabulous international reward where it really would be a once in a lifetime thing. Usually they wouldn't have had the wherewithal to fund that kind of a trip, and it would either be with a partner or you earn a single ticket, or the way that you earn your second ticket is you do even better than your single qualifying results. And we would take people all over the world. We still do that. It is a tremendously powerful reason for being and wanting to be in that top club of winners and of excellence.
So,
And
David, you now got me all excited because I love travel and incentivize me. I want to go travel with you. So, what are some of the
yeah,
kinds of destinations that maybe people are not that familiar with or wouldn't typically have gone on their family holiday?
yeah. I mean, we've done amazing things. Like we did a Moscow St. Petersburg winter grand tour, if you want to call it, where we took people to Moscow and the Bolshoi Ballet, and then on a high-speed luxury train to St. Petersburg to see that in the middle of winter at minus 15 degrees. You wouldn't imagine South Africans would love that, but it's such a mind-blowing, different immersion in a different culture. And people came back and talked about that for years and years. Of course, we've mixed that up with destinations that are in Asia that are warmer climates. We've recently done some amazing things in Vietnam, just beautiful World Heritage sites, using part of those for gala dinners and reward functions, and then cruise on Halong Bay, which is absolutely amazing on the Emerald Asian Sea. Just phenomenal, different immersion, different things. And as you said, not things that people would sort of book as their first time travel somewhere. So it creates this trophy valued lifetime experience that people come back and say, wow, I did this and that. And gee, the organizers, yeah, that thought of everything. Every night we got a little pillow drop on that we were able to bring back as keepsakes. We got backstage access to have champagne and caviar with the lead dancer of the Bolshoi Ballet after the show. Gee, you can't do that as a normal person. Wow, that kind of mind-blowing experience.
Wow, David,
Yeah.
I love this. This is so exciting. And you use technology to get the system to be fair, to be accessible. Tell us more about the use of technology and what you're doing.
Yeah, so we started just with that kind of application and offering to businesses, but that's a very expensive end reward. It's not, it's a big budget item. And there are other reward offerings that can be just as exciting and stimulating and produce winning culture within an organization. Of course, when in the early or the late 1999 2000, we there was the whole internet revolution and the dot-com era, and I was playing with a friend of mine with some concepts, creating technology that would measure and reward and dashboard certain things. And we created one of the very first platform type of applications for employees to see their progress, their goals, what they were working on in almost live time streaming of data. Because one of the key components of any great reward program or incentive program is communicating progress. How are you doing? Keep going. That pat on the back, the you can get there. You're just two sales short, or it's an incremental, micro, progressive ability. Now, in the old days, without technology and data, we weren't able to do that successfully at scale. With technology, one could then introduce the ability to do that at scale, cross border, nationally instead of locally, and so on. So it then gave us muscle from a tech point of view to provide the easy to access, user access, I'm talking about, data as to what you need to do, where are you on the journey, how much further there is, what is it that you're looking forward to winning, and a reminder of those things, and a constant ebb and flow of interaction and engagement with employees. And of course, as recent years, employee engagement has become such a huge topic. Actually, the technology was an enabler of greater levels of employee engagement in the workplace. There's a lot more to it than that, but we were able to provide that. And obviously, over time, since 2000 to 26 years later, there's a huge amount of improvement that we've garnered. The solution is fairly similar in terms of what are we trying to solve for, but then how we're doing it in unique and creative ways with technology is then the thing that makes it exciting and new, and our teams are coming up with incredible innovation.
Brilliant. That is so useful. I think we could chat a lot. My background is tech, so I think we could chat all day about that. However, I want to
Yeah.
bring something else in here. You mentioned employee engagement,
Mm.
and the latest research, we've just seen the new report come out from Gallup. It's dropped again globally. Not in your clients, I'm sure, but globally, it's dropped again that we've had a reduction in employee engagement. And for some people, they might be struggling with this idea of surely if you have really good leadership, you don't need an incentive program. What about that tension? How do you support leaders through what you're doing as opposed to replace leadership, if I can put it that way?
Yeah, I always say at the start of any consultation with any new business or leader that what we do is a co-creation. We never going to give you something that you didn't know anything about or is something new to you. All leaders know in order to have influence and impact and ongoing engagement in a genuine way, they need to do things with consistency, fairness, and intent. And what is that intent? It's intent to create a better working space, happier employees, more productive processes, more exciting consumer product, whatever it might be that makes that particular business successful. All we're doing as a business is partnering with those leaders to provide a safe pair of hands, a great service around executing on that on a consistent day-to-day basis with the latest technology. So we're not replacing anybody. We're just there to help leaders hold true to their good intentions. And consistency in the workplace is such a difficult thing to attain because there's always things sparking and leadership needing to rush off to do this and do that and do the next thing and be involved in this, or crisis happens, and the day-to-day journey of employee wellness, employee health, employee focus sometimes just gets lost. So having a partner like us brings consistency to that effort. It is our core job. We know we've done it for 30 years plus. We go to all the latest seminars and world leaders gatherings to get the very latest and greatest so that we can bring it home and add value to the leaders along the way. The leaders that I love working for, and I'm sure you do as well, are those that ask good questions. Things like, hey, we've done this. What's next? How can we do? What can we do next? How can we? Let's be curious about this. If we had to reinvent this, what would we do differently? Which then gets the consistent base not to be boringly consistent, but pop with innovation in the consistency curve. That's I think what you really want to have. You want to have a conservative consistency with pop, happy, exciting innovation along the way.
Love it. I absolutely love it. One of the things that I say a lot is that leadership is a real job. And a lot of leaders, one of my coaches said the other day, "Oh, you mean a lot of leaders think they're just moonlighting as leaders. Their real job is something else, and their leadership is just something they do on the side." And the conclusion of the conversation is that a lot of people talk about leadership being a lot of soft skills. And the problem with soft skills is that they're hard. And the more help I can get, the more systems I can put in place, the more tools I can use, innovation, then it's taking some of the pressure off me, but it's not reducing my role, because my role as a leader is so intense and so multifaceted and so lonely sometimes, that having a partner that can help me along that journey is such a boost and such a bonus.
Indeed. It reminds me of a great partner that I have in my business. His
And
name's
you
Ian
might.
Hatton.
Uh, Thank you,
We've
David.
had such a great friendship over the years.
Yeah.
And you've seen us in a very early stage and a little bit of a mid stage and now more mature stage. And yeah, you've been there and supported me as a leader, and I appreciate that and what you do, Ian.
So I want to unpack that a little bit, but before we do that, do you have any thoughts on the evolution of leadership? When you started out nearly 32 years ago and where you are now, have you seen changes in the way people lead, or changes in the way people need to lead? In other words, where the old styles of leadership are maybe not working so well anymore. And what are some of your observations with your clients and even in your own business?
Yeah, I suppose, Ian, the biggest reflection for me is how I've changed and how I've needed to change, and how I think leadership needs to constantly be refreshing themselves, making ourselves a better source of compassion, empathy, leadership, focus, and energy in order to stay relevant and to keep our teams energized and moving in a direction that everybody's still excited about. Um, that's one reflection point. I think you're better placed to talk about leadership and how it's evolved, helping leaders like myself. I've certainly seen some of our client leaders having to endure maybe too much overload, too much Yeah, in some of the corporate world seems to be coming just, I don't really want to make a criticism, but it just seems like there is so much overload on top leaders. Just to get 5 minutes on a virtual call is difficult sometimes because these men and women are just from pillar to post, they're just moving and it never stops. And when you do get to spend time with them, you realize that it's very onerous. And I don't know where that goes. I've seen some leaders, the modern leader looks like sometimes an Iron Man or an Iron Woman. They're up at 4 a.m. doing their 3 hour run and swim and cold plunge, and they attack the workplace like they're attacking an Iron Man. Yeah, I think things have become very different in the technology space and the application of technology in businesses. So leaders have had to become much more tech savvy. Of course, the financial acumen has to be there. The people acumen also has to be there, and in the leadership domain, huge focus on strategy and setting the right kind of wellness example. Some do it incredibly well, but that can also turn out to look like an addiction sometimes. And when you look at these, I'm not the Iron Man type of leader. But health and wellness is certainly a very important part
Yeah.
of my leadership.
What if you can shift your world in just 15 minutes? Will you do it? Well, now you can. With the Global State of Leadership Survey, powered by the EG3 Leadership Assessment from Totally Morpheus. As an individual, you get your secure assessment, instant report, and a personalized micro-learning pathway to grow as a leader. No cost, no risk, just pure liberating leadership. As a team or organization, you get all of that for your people. State-of-the-art leadership resources, performance, succession that builds a sustainable future. And as a society, well, we all get the global results and access to the comprehensive Global State of Leadership report. That means better leadership and a better world for all of us. The Global State of Leadership Survey, powered by the EG3 from Totally Morpheus. Take it, share it, benefit.
So this is fascinating. Thank you. I'm enjoying the conversation. David, this whole idea of the kind of Iron Man leader, there was a promise of technology at some point, and we're still even talking about it now with the advent of AI, of how certain roles are maybe being replaced, whatever. But you would imagine that if that were completely true, leaders would be so chilled because now there's less to do because AI is doing all the work for me and all of this kind of stuff. But it's almost as if we're seeing the opposite. The behaviors are almost more frenetic than ever.
Yeah, we all had that opportunity to pause and reflect during the COVID lockdown period. And we all said, yeah, this balance is so important. And when we get back to work, we're going to definitely apply that. But it wasn't in a heartbeat and 2 months in and everybody was going crazy again. And I don't know, maybe that's where the younger generation are saying, I'm not into this. This is not what I've signed up for. This is not how I imagined life to be. I want to be in something else. And whatever that something else is, I'm not sure, but it certainly is having an impact, and it's more and more of a question. 30 years ago, it wasn't even a question that was asked by anybody. It was like, just get up and work and do it, and off you go. Now it's, do I want this? Do I want to work for one of these big corporates that it's about the pound of flesh and it's the never-ending treadmill of activities and things? But the reality in life today, life is a challenge, a very big challenge with great opportunities, great rewards, and great risk. So in order to navigate through all of that, you have to work hard. There's no two ways about it. Success
Yeah.
comes with hard work. It's not going to come and land on your plate like like the Instagram life that you think your mates have. They don't have it.
Yes. I had a director of a very large company in one of my sessions that I was doing once. I think it might have been in Nigeria or something, but it was a very senior leader. Everybody almost cowered when he walked into the room, not because he was aggressive, but just because they were so in awe. And at one point in the conversation, we had a very brief conversation around high performance, newer generation people, whether that's millennial, Gen Z, probably at some stage very soon, actually emerging Gen A as well. And people were going, oh, but these people are this and these people are that, and they don't want to work the way we, all this, and the culture the work ethic we grew up with. And he stood up and he said, guys, I want to say something to all of you. If we can't lead this generation, can we even call ourselves leaders? And I thought that was such a telling argument. And I think that the sort of changes that you've just been mentioning are a leadership challenge for leaders to get on top of, to figure out how do we engage this generation? How do we not only leverage them, but actually build them into our succession planning? Because some of these people are saying, I watch the stress that my boss goes through. I don't want to be that. I don't want to do that, even if they have leadership potential. And maybe the stress they're observing is maybe a survivor mode leadership or a striver mode leadership. And they're going, that doesn't interest me. I want to see a different kind of leadership that might interest me. And so we've seen, even in your own business, a bit of an evolution of the type of leadership that's being applied. And you and I have had many conversations, especially over the last, 3-4 years, about succession. You needing to raise up new leaders. You're reaching certainly not the twilight of your life, but the twilight of this season, because I know you've got so much more to offer the world, but this season of being the founder of the company and so on. Are you seeing any of this? What are some of the struggles that you've faced in raising up as leaders who can succeed you and dealing with the newer generations? You've recently been expanding your workforce. How's the leadership of that?
It's so interesting, Ian. One of the things that I also have always carried with me in my leadership thought bubble is, man, I was 29 or 28, and my first employer was 19 years old. And she was just like a superstar travel somebody person. And I thought if a 28-year-old and a 19-year-old could get a business going and with a little bit of help, and then we got other 20-year-olds in and made it happen, surely this young person that I've just hired that maybe could be my daughter or my son, they can do it as well. So in my mind, I don't discriminate. Don't have this ageist sort of mindset. I always think I did it, so they can do it. And then, but it's a big difference between having something in your mind and having to communicate and influence that with a young person in the workplace. But if you get down to a conversation and you start sharing a bit of history and a journey, and I do this with all new employees, I have a history induction session on their induction pathway. It's like an hour with Dave. And I say to them, you know what is important to know where we've come from as a business and where we are now and where we can go and how you can make a difference in the future, where you can make a difference right now. And why were you hired? You were hired because of all these cool things. And these are the expectations that we have, and understanding that you've come into a business and you're older than I was when I started it. You've got all the potential to carry this business another 30 years into the future. And we want you on board, and we're not messing around here. We didn't hire you and you didn't get hired because of a lucky punch. You got hired because of these things, and you have displayed in your interviewing process our values and our culture, and you like us, but of course you're not like us yet, because I'm now older, but our values are not age related. If you value integrity, doesn't matter what age you are. If you value respect for each other, then those are the things, and this is what we want to see applied. then all of a sudden you start seeing lights go on that go, oh, yes, get it. Okay, this is not about legacy. This is about future, and this is where I fit in. And I really do believe those kind of conversations need to be had from day one, and they need to be continued throughout the leadership conversation, from the most senior to the mid management and so on. I think maybe, yeah, because people today have such massive potential. They've got tools and knowledge and things at their disposal that we didn't when we started. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so interesting that you say that, because one of the things when I have typically Gen X or maybe even baby boomer leaders telling me, oh, but the new generation's this and the new generation's that, one of my favorite things is to ask them is, so what advantages do the new generations bring that we didn't have in the previous? Because this is part of it. And it's not about being ageist or anything like that. It's about going, well, if there is some kind of a shift, surely there's something to leverage in that shift. And maybe the old style of leadership doesn't work. But if you could find the right kind of leadership, maybe you'll get something that you couldn't have got out of the previous generation or something like that. And that kind of makes me think a bit more about the personal journey of leadership, because that requires listening. It requires being teachable. I remember once reading a book about leadership strengths, and they had a chapter on the fatal flaws of leaders. And the number one fatal flaw was not being teachable. And as we are journeying and we're getting newer generations or shifts like AI and what's the impact and these kinds of things, are we learning to adjust as leaders to what our people now need for their best performance and that kind of thing? Now, to me, this becomes very personal, because I don't think I was teachable. I think when you and I met, it was 22 years ago, and it was through particular leadership development work. And I thought, when I was doing my first ever deliveries, having switched careers from IT into this field, that I had to have all of the answers. I had to be the one with all of the solutions to everything that happened. And I actually had somebody write on an assessment at the end of training. And this is very early days, not long after you and I met, where they actually said on the assessment, Ian's need to be right is getting in the way of being a great facilitator. And
Oh,
it was devastating. I was absolutely
I'm sure.
devastated. However, it changed my entire leadership trajectory, where I realized my job was to help other people discover truth, not to be the custodian of all truth and try and pour it into their buckets. And this sort of self-discovery. And I think that's a great analogy for leadership.
It is. Yeah, it certainly is. I've always admired people that have all the answers. I've got, I've, where did you get all those? You're so clever. I wish I was as clever as that. But you're right, it sometimes does get in the way of good connection and good relationship. And at the end of the day, it's not about knowledge. Knowledge now is so available freely from any of your favorite AI tools. It's what are you going to do about it? And how are you going to do it? And whom are you going to do it with? And how are those relationships going to be leveraged or put together in a way that's going to make it exciting, fun, and successful? And that's why, as a business, what we do is meaningful and purposeful, because it helps people when they come together to find the magic amongst themselves, to be purpose driven themselves and goal orientated, and to be able to pat themselves on the back and not forget to say thank you and be kind and nice and all of those things that are important in the human domain. It's not important if you're a machine, but in the human domain, those things are exceptionally important. And they're the things that make you want to go back to the restaurant and order another meal. It's the things that make you want to accept that braai invitation to Dave's, because it's fun to be there and he always puts the right people together. And when they're together, not awkward. There's always good music. There's the human elements of things that are more than just being in the same room. And I suppose you could call those the softer things, but they're not. They're the valuable things that need to be paid attention to. And yeah, it's not easy, but those that master the art of doing that right in a human context have the best braais, the restaurants that everybody favors to go back to, the working environment where people want to show up and do their best in, and where leaders actually enjoy their work because the people around them are finding their own solutions in a collaborative and enriching way.
Exactly, exactly. Now, David, I'm going to ask you a slightly more personal question, but I'm going to frame it in a little bit in a context. And the context is this. Many people will have heard me say this, that I often quote John C. Maxwell, who said, everything rises and falls on leadership. I then often quote my father, who was telling me that in the 1970s, long before John C. Maxwell was really on the scene. And my latest interpretation is leadership rises and falls on self-leadership. And I discovered this the hard way. I went through a divorce and losing my business and a whole bunch of things some 15 years ago. And it was a personal awakening to me to realize that the one area of leadership I'd never focused on was me. It had always been about techniques, it had always been about behaviors, it had always been about strategy, but it hadn't been about me. And I had to look in the mirror and go, oh, here's where the leadership problem is. It's not over there, it's here. And right to the point where you know of the states of leadership that I often talk about, survivor, striver, and thriver. But I was seeing very senior leaders in big multinational organizations who were playing the blame game. Oh, it's my boss's fault. Oh, it's the government's fault. It's the economy's fault. Or even, it's my own people's fault that I'm a bad leader. And I'm going, excuse me, are you even listening to yourself? And that awareness was something that grew in me from this big event 15 years ago. And it's been a journey ever since. There's no destination, but I was seeing a significant increase in my impact as a leader by self-leading. And I know you've had a little bit of a journey in the last 2 years yourself. And I'm wondering if you'd be prepared to share a little bit about that and what some of the impact has been on you as a leader and in your business.
Yeah, I think in a very key realization and where you are now in terms of the development of self, the nurturing, the ability to overcome your saboteurs and the things that trip you up on a regular basis as a person, as a human, is critical for you to be a better human, a better, well-rounded individual, to live a life that's full of joy and peace and love. Now, that is every single human being. It's not the domain of leadership. But when it comes to leadership, it is a very important place to come to a realization of, especially successful leaders that have got there by either being in the right place, the right room, and the right time, huge amounts of work and energy, successful. And am I happy as is the inner me the person that I want to be? Is it am I really full of joy, and am I making a difference that I want to be making in the world to my family, my friends? And if it's not, then do the inner journey work, because it is mind blowing. I got to doing the inner journey work not because I was unhappy necessarily, but I had got to a place where people outside of my head were telling me that I was okay than the person inside my head that was telling me I was okay and making a good job of things. I became exceptionally critical of the things that I did and didn't do. I spent a lot of my mental energy saying it wasn't good enough. And that is a kind of a trait of a hyper achiever, somebody that really wants to go and do. It's never enough. And success is like a drug that becomes weaker and weaker. The more successful you are, the less joy you get from that success. And you just jumping on the next thing before even sitting back and celebrating and saying, oh, that was wonderful, and enjoying the moment. So it became a little bit dry and meaningless, the things that I was doing. And so going and on an inner journey of doing some work then made me very mindful of the things that were tripping me up and the things that I was saying to myself and the things that I was not allowing myself enough space and time to do. And then I realized that person was also having a negative consequence on the people around me at work. I was being quite hard on people at work as well. Because I was being hard on myself, I was being hard on them. I was not satisfied internally, so I was not satisfied in the boardroom. And it became a bit grumpy, to use a simple term. I then went on this incredible course called Positive Intelligence, which, there we go. Fantastic book, fantastic author. And I then got involved in a journey of unpacking these things that were sabotaging my life. When I say sabotaging my life, it's not external things, it's internal things that I was self-sabotaging. My thought life had become corrupted. And in being able to apply some of these techniques and reflective mechanisms, I got back to feeling a little bit more joyful, lighthearted again. Was able to easily spot one of these saboteurs coming over the hill, ready to beat me up, and put him in his place and live in a more, what the author calls, a sage world, a sage mindset, and just being a little bit more happy and reflective. And I think that it was a 2-3 month process, but it's now gone on. Now I'm continually engaging in this style of thinking and making it my style of thinking rather than it's another course. And in doing that, I think there's been a huge personal shift. And I've been told by others that they can feel that energy difference in the workplace. They feel a little lighter in their own space. And I've also seen some remarkable improvements in what's happened over the last 12 months, I would say. And we've actually had the pleasure of measuring it through your egg assessment process then, and obviously a lot of intervention from your side, and again, applying and hopefully passing on some of these opportunities for other leaders in our team to go through the same process of widening their thinking about who they are and who they want to be in the organization. And as a result, we've opened up new opportunities and new growth in me and growth in the people in the team.
Yeah. It's been such a fascinating journey because I first came across Shazad Shamin's work before you mentioned it to me, and I'd done the assessment, then I'd forgotten about it, and I never really engaged. And then you were telling me about you, and then you actually helped me to go through the course as well. And what I found so amazing is that we developed this body of work from 5 years ago already. I think it is around at 4 years ago that we developed this body of work around the egg and the three states of leadership: the survivor, the striver, and the thriver. And what we suddenly realized is that the survivor and striver states are saboteur driven. The inner saboteur is driving those states, and the thriver state is sage driven. It's the one where you're now actually behaving out of your real essence, not these things that were established maybe somewhere earlier in your life, probably in childhood, that kind of were protection mechanisms. But now you're actually operating out of a more adult version of yourself, maybe. I know some of my saboteurs are like 4-year-old and 6-year-old, and it's weird to have a 4-year-old or a 6-year-old driving a 63-year-old person's life. And it's now, okay, let's deal with that. Let's bring the sage. And you're right, the awareness is there and spot them coming over the horizon already. And what we've seen in your business, for example, is we had at one stage, in fact, one stage was a lot higher than this, but we saw between two assessments, reassessing and discovering every single one of those that were in the survivor state had now moved to the thriver state. And most of the strivers also. And it's wow. So what is the impact of that been on the sort of feeling, the culture in the organization, and maybe even some of the results?
Yeah, I think the culture certainly has become more engaged and responsible, and there's so much more collaboration happening. In the business, and we've introduced a new leader that is just phenomenal energy. She brings a tremendous amount of sage way of thinking and operating in our business. Some of the existing guys have certainly cracked the mold of same old people that you used to, the way they're going to react to something. It's predictable. They've changed some of their predictability and are asking different questions and doing things differently, which is wonderful, because that's the growth shift that you can then see. Oh, okay, this is nice, this is different, the better result. And so, yeah, results are there. We're also working in defining a succession generation of people in our business, and there's some wonderful talent in that group of people as well. Also, just having the psychological safe space to have these conversations has become embedded in our team charter. We're saying it's important to be safe because these are deep, and some of these conversations I don't know, you don't even have with family members, but you've got to be able to be providing a safe space. So I think that safe space kind of concept is really cool. We also upped the emphasis on the need for healthy conflict. Now, those two things might seem in complete juxtapositions, but it is because you have a psychological safe space that conflict can happen in a constructive way and not a negative, toxic way. So I think we're allowing ourselves to have more of those conversations, more accountability as a result, more traction. And those are really good things.
Wow. Thank you so much, David. I'm going to start drawing the conversation to a close, and I've got two questions. The first question is this. If you had to reflect on your entire career, which is longer than since you founded Iwin, and you've dealt with leaders, you've worked with leaders, is there a particular bit of advice of something that you maybe wished you'd learned earlier that you are now applying as a leader that you wish other leaders, maybe younger leaders who are listening to this, would think about earlier in their careers?
Yeah, Ian, there are so many things, so to pick out one is really hard, but I
If you're
think
both okay.
I think it's just to be a person that cares is a fundamentally important starting block for any leader. And when I say to be cares, you need to have a really genuine love for people, that you want to see them do better than you could do on your own. You want to see them accelerate their career path to the highest place they could get it to. And if you can be of any help in that process, then it should be your goal to be that person that cares enough to want to see that person go all the way. And if you could do that for somebody else, you've achieved a great purpose in your life, and your leadership purpose would have had a noble intent. And I think that's, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've stuffed that up many times, by the way.
Me too.
Um,
Me too.
And there are one or two people that I can reflect on in the past that I'd wish I'd spent more time and more energy on to see that their career had accelerated at a greater pace than possibly they did. But it's just about really caring, and I think that really relates to a younger generation person as well. When there is a belief that there's a genuine intent, then they're fully engaged. I have not met a younger generational person that when you've passed the integrity and the test, when it comes to are you authentic, then it's game on. But you don't pass the authentic test, you're not going anywhere.
So true.
Yeah.
So, David, is there something that you wished I'd asked in this conversation, or something that you'd want to really say that you haven't said yet around anything we've talked about?
And you have a huge amount of incredible wisdom, and it's not knowing everything, but it's being able to unpack things in a wise and very counseled way around leadership. And you've trained people over the world. I would have loved to have heard more about your opinions on this, but I know that, hopefully in future podcasts, you will spend some more time also just talking about leadership from your perspective, and maybe I'll ask to set up one where I can be the interviewer and ask you a whole bunch of questions, because it's always phenomenal talking to you. So thank you for inviting me onto your podcast, but I hope as well that somebody will interview you, if it's not me, but some unpack the sage that you have there. The one other thing, I think we're in a tremendously challenging time from a human resource and future of work point of view with the AI world that's upon us. I've always been passionate about young leaders, and I believe, and I've seen especially in the South African context, young people have such huge potential, and we need to really pay attention to how we nurture that through the schooling system, through universities, and then into the workplace. And it's not a good place to land in a corporate and you've never had any leadership experience, exposure, or direction. So where do you get that from? And I'm very keen on people learning leadership through volunteer organizations. Volunteer at your church or your mosque or your local community radio station, volunteer at your scout hall or whatever. Get involved in civil society in a volunteer way. And that is a great start to the leadership journey. And I think leadership is something that the earlier you expose children to the concept of leadership, accountability, responsibility, the better. And we've certainly got some amazing young people in our country that are going to take us a long way, not only in our country, but on the African continent.
Wow, what a place to end. Thank you so much for that. And I totally agree with you. I think that is unbelievably exciting to look at the potential in the young generation rather than the criticism of the young generation, because there are things that they bring that nobody else can bring. And it's so needed in this day and age. That is a lot of wisdom from a young man like you.
Sandman. Yeah. Ian, thank you so much.
David, thank you so much for this incredible conversation. And should people want to find out more, you've unpacked a little bit about what your business does. Maybe people would like to know more about that, or just contact you for that sage wisdom that you are bringing. What is the best way to get hold of you?
Yeah. Ian, our Iwin website is uwiniwin.co.za. Or I have a profile on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and also a Iwin YouTube channel. So all the socials. I also have a book that I wrote, a little bit of a biography in my earlier days as an entrepreneur, and that's called The Song of the Sandman. available on Amazon.
Brilliant. We will make sure that those links are in the show notes. Thank you very much, David.